The security alarm screamed through the private hangar at 3 in the morning, shattering the silence of the Royal Airfield. Captain James Morrison's hands trembled as he stared at the surveillance footage on his phone. Something was terribly wrong with the private jet that belonged to Thomas Hartley, the Queen Consort's eldest son. The plane sat motionless on the tarmac, but the cargo door hung open like a broken jaw, swinging slowly in the cold winter wind. Morrison had been head of royal security for 12 years, and nothing in his experience prepared him for what he was seeing. The jet had landed just 4 hours earlier from a supposed charity visit to Monaco. All security protocols had been followed. The manifest had been checked. Thomas himself had walked off the plane with his usual confident stride, waving briefly at the night crew before disappearing into his waiting car. Everything had seemed normal, but now, at 3 in the morning, every sensor on that aircraft was firing alerts. Morrison pulled his coat tighter and ran toward the hangar, his breath forming white clouds in the freezing air. His second-in-command, Detective Sarah Chen, was already there, standing at the bottom of the plane's stairs with a flashlight in one hand and her radio in the other. "You need to see this," Chen said, her voice tight with tension. "Don't touch anything. I've already called the palace security director."
Ow.
Morrison climbed the stairs, his heart pounding. The interior of the luxury jet looked untouched at first glance. Leather seats still smelled of expensive cologne. Crystal glasses sat clean in their holders. But Chen led him to the rear of the cabin, past the sleeping quarters, to a storage compartment that should have been empty. It wasn't empty. Inside the hidden compartment, carefully wrapped in protective covering, sat dozens of wooden crates. Morrison's blood ran cold as Chen pried one open with her gloved hands. Inside, nestled in protective foam, were artifacts that made his mouth go dry. Ancient manuscripts, jewelry that gleamed even in the dim cabin light, religious relics that he recognized from his training in art theft prevention. "These aren't supposed to exist anymore," Morrison whispered, picking up a golden chalice with shaking hands. This piece was reported destroyed in a museum fire in Athens 3 years ago. The Greek government held a state funeral for the curator who supposedly died trying to save it. Chun's face had gone pale. "Sir, there's more. Look at the shipping labels." Morrison examined the crates more carefully. Each one bore shipping codes and destination addresses. But it was the letterhead on the packing slips that made his stomach drop. They bore the official seal of the royal household. Not just any department, but the private office of the Queen Consort herself. "This can't be right," Morrison said, but his voice lacked conviction. "There has to be an explanation. Maybe it's a donation. Maybe Thomas was transporting these for a museum." At 3 in the morning? With no security detail? No official manifests? Chen shook her head. "Sir, I've been doing this job for 8 years. This is smuggling. High-level, organized smuggling. And it leads directly to the palace." Morrison's mind raced through the implications. If Thomas Hartley was involved in antiquities smuggling, the scandal would be catastrophic. But if his mother, the Queen Consort, knew about it, if palace resources were being used, the monarchy itself could be threatened. "We need to secure this aircraft immediately," Morrison ordered. "No one in or out. Contact the palace security director, but no one else. Not yet. We need to understand what we're dealing with before this goes any further." Chen nodded and pulled out her encrypted phone. Morrison stood alone in the cabin, surrounded by stolen history, and felt the weight of what he'd discovered crushing down on him. In his pocket, his own phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "Stop looking. For your own good." His hands shook as he deleted the message, but not before memorizing the number. Someone knew he was here. Someone was watching. And they were scared enough to threaten a royal security officer. Morrison walked back to the front of the plane, his mind working through scenarios. The artifacts alone represented millions in black market value. But more than that, they represented cultural heritage. Pieces of human history that belonged to the world, not to private collectors. How long had this been going on? How many trips had Thomas made? And most importantly, who else was involved? He stepped off the plane into the cold night air just as 3 black cars pulled up to the hangar. The palace security director, Lord Edmund Winchester, emerged from the first vehicle. He was a tall man in his 60s, with iron-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Behind him came two men Morrison didn't recognize, dressed in dark suits that screamed government intelligence. "Captain Morrison," Winchester said, his voice carefully neutral, "I understand we have a situation. Brief me. Everything." As Morrison began to explain what they'd found, he watched Winchester's face carefully. The older man's expression never changed. But Morrison saw his jaw tighten almost imperceptibly when he mentioned the palace seal on the shipping documents. "See," Winchester said when Morrison finished. "This is now an official investigation under my direct authority. You and Detective Chen will continue your work, but you report only to me. Is that understood?" "Yes, sir," Morrison said, but something felt wrong. Winchester was too calm, too controlled. This should have shocked him, horrified him. Instead, he seemed almost prepared for it. "One more thing, Captain," Winchester added, turning back toward his car. "Thomas Hartley is scheduled to depart for Edinburgh tomorrow afternoon. Another charity function. I want full surveillance on that flight. Full manifests. Complete security sweep. But quietly. We don't want to alert anyone that we're watching." Morrison nodded, but as the cars drove away, leaving him and Chen alone in the hangar once more, he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. Winchester had said, "We don't want to alert anyone." Not we don't want to alert him. Anyone. How deep did this go? And more frightening still, how many people in the palace already knew about it? Chen appeared beside him, her face grim. "Sir, I ran that phone number that texted you. It's registered to a diplomatic cover company. The kind intelligence services use." Morrison closed his eyes. This wasn't just smuggling. This was something much bigger, much darker, and he'd just stepped into the middle of it. The game had begun. Morrison didn't sleep that night. He sat in his office at Palace Security Headquarters, surrounded by computer screens showing surveillance footage from every angle of the hangar. The plane sat there like a sleeping beast, holding secrets that could bring down the monarchy. Every hour his phone buzzed with encrypted messages from Chen, who was coordinating with forensics teams to catalog. Every item in those crates. The sun was just beginning to rise when Chen walked into his office, carrying 2 cups of strong coffee and a thick folder. Her eyes were red from exhaustion, but there was an energy about her that told Morrison she'd found something important. "You need to see this," she said, dropping the folder on his desk. "I've been going through financial records for the past 6 hours. Thomas Hartley's charity foundation has made 43 international trips in the last 2 years, 43 every single one to a country with weak antiquities protection laws or recent political instability." Morrison opened the folder. Inside were flight manifests, customs, declarations, and photographs. Chen had done exceptional work. She'd traced a pattern that was impossible to ignore. Syria, Iraq, Libya, Yemen, Afghanistan, every war-torn region where priceless artifacts had gone missing in the chaos. "It gets worse," Chen continued, pulling out a separate sheet. "I cross-referenced the flight dates with reported thefts from museums and archaeological sites. 17 matches. 17 times that Thomas landed in a city within days of a major theft. That's not coincidence." Morrison felt his stomach turn. This wasn't just opportunistic smuggling. This was systematic, organized, and it had been going on for years. Right under everyone's noses. Protected by royal privilege and diplomatic immunity. "There's something else," Chen said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I found wire transfers. Large ones. Going from Thomas's personal accounts to shell companies in Switzerland and the Cayman Islands. But here's the interesting part. Some of those same shell companies made donations to certain palace restoration projects. Projects that the Queen Consort personally oversees." Morrison's blood ran cold. Money laundering. The stolen artifacts were being sold to private collectors. The money was being laundered through legitimate palace channels. His mind raced through the implications. If this came out, it wouldn't just destroy Thomas. It would taint the entire royal family. The scandal would be unprecedented. His phone rang. It was Winchester. My office now. Both of you. 20 minutes later, Morrison and Chen sat across from Winchester in his ornate office in the east wing of the palace. The security director looked like he hadn't slept either, but his suit was perfectly pressed, his tie perfectly knotted. Next to him sat a woman Morrison had never seen before. She was in her 40s, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to calculate everything they saw. "This is Victoria Cross," Winchester said without preamble. "My six. She's been investigating an international antiquities smuggling ring for 3 years. Captain Morrison, it appears you've stumbled into her operation." Morrison felt like he'd been punched. "Your operation? You knew about this?" Cross leaned forward, her voice cold and professional. "We've known about Thomas Hartley's activities for 18 months. We've been building a case. Your discovery last night has complicated things considerably." "Complicated." Chen's voice was sharp with anger. "He's smuggling stolen artifacts using royal privileges. He's laundering money through the palace. And you've known?" "We've known," Cross said calmly, "because we've been using him. Thomas Hartley isn't the mastermind. He's a middleman. A useful idiot with access and resources. The real operation is much bigger. It involves foreign governments, terrorist financing, and a network that spans 3 continents. Winchester pulled out a map and spread it across his desk. Red pins marked locations across the Middle East, Europe, and Asia. Lines connected them in a web of routes and relationships. "The artifacts Thomas smuggles aren't just sold to collectors," Winchester explained. "They're used as currency. Untraceable, valuable currency. Terrorist groups use them to fund operations. Rogue states use them to bypass sanctions. And somewhere in this network is someone in the palace who's been facilitating it all. We don't know who yet, but we're close." Morrison's head was spinning. The Queen Consort, the documents, the money transfers. It's maybe involved, Cross said. Or maybe a carefully constructed frame. That's what we need to find out. That's why we can't arrest Thomas yet. We need him to lead us higher up the chain, if he's working with his mother. Chen asked the question they were all thinking. The room fell silent. Finally, Winchester spoke. "Then we have a constitutional crisis unlike anything in modern history, and we need to handle it very, very carefully." Morrison stood up and walked to the window. Outside, tourists were gathering for the changing of the guard. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that inside these ancient walls their government was dancing on the edge of chaos. "What do you need from us?" he asked, turning back to face them. Cross pulled out a surveillance plan. "Thomas's flight to Edinburgh this afternoon. We need you to let it proceed normally. But we want full audio surveillance. Video, everything. We have intelligence that he's meeting someone there. Someone important. Someone who might be the link we need. If something goes wrong?" Morrison asked. "If he escapes? If he destroys evidence? Then we lose 3 years of work," Cross said bluntly. "But that's the risk we have to take. This is bigger than one smuggler, Captain. This is about networks that fund terrorism, destabilize governments, and erase human history for profit. We need the whole network." Chen looked at Morrison, waiting for his decision. He thought about his oath to protect the royal family. But which version of protection did they need? Protection from scandal? Or protection from those who would use their position to commit crimes? "We'll do it," Morrison said finally. "But I want updates. Every step. And if I think civilian lives are at risk, I'm pulling the plug." Cross nodded. "Fair enough. Winchester will be your liaison. The surveillance equipment will be installed this morning. Thomas won't suspect a thing." As they left Winchester's office, Chen grabbed Morrison's arm. "Sir, are we really going to let him fly? Knowing what we know?" Morrison looked at her tired face, saw the same conflict he felt. "We're going to do our jobs, Chen. We're going to follow the investigation where it leads, even if it leads into the heart of the palace itself." What neither of them knew was that in a quiet office, 3 floors above them, someone was already making phone calls. Warning calls. Calls that would change everything about the Edinburgh flight. The game had changed. and Morrison had just become a player in something far more dangerous than he'd imagined. The Edinburgh flight took off at exactly 2 in the afternoon. Morrison watched from the control tower as the sleek private jet climbed into the grey Scottish sky. Somewhere on that plane, hidden in the luxury fittings, were 12 surveillance devices. Audio, video, GPS tracking. Thomas Hartley's every move would be recorded. Morrison's earpiece crackled to life. It was the MI6 technical team in a van parked near the hangar. All systems operational. We have clear audio and video from all positions. Through his binoculars, Morrison had watched Thomas board the plane. The man looked relaxed, confident. He'd been wearing an expensive suit and carrying only a small briefcase. No indication he suspected anything. No sign of worry. But Morrison was worried. Something felt wrong about this whole operation. The pieces fit too neatly. Winchester's calm acceptance, Cross's convenient appearance. The perfect timing of it all. His instincts, honed by 12 years of security work, were screaming at him. Chen appeared beside him with a tablet showing the flight path. Estimated arrival in Edinburgh, 3:45. The surveillance team is already in position at the private terminal. Cross has agents placed at every exit. Morrison nodded, but didn't take his eyes off the shrinking in the sky. Pull up Thomas's phone records for the last 24 hours. Chen's fingers flew across the tablet. He made 7 calls yesterday. 3 to his office, 2 to his sister, 1 to his mother, and 1 to an unknown number. The unknown number? Can you trace it? Already did. It's registered to a law firm in Edinburgh. Mackenzie & Sons. They specialize in international estate law. Morrison felt that wrongness intensify. Estate law. Why would Thomas need an estate lawyer? Chen pulled up more information. The firm has an interesting client list. Several Middle Eastern businessmen, a few Russian oligarchs, and 3 members of the royal family, including the Queen Consort. Get me everything on that law firm. Partners, employees, financial records. I want to know what they had for breakfast. As Chen worked, Morrison's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The plane won't reach Edinburgh. Get out while you can. His hands went cold. He grabbed the radio. Control, this is Morrison. Do we have any unusual radar contacts near the Edinburgh flight? A pause. Then, negative, sir. Flight path is clear. Weather is good. No issues reported. Morrison stared at the text message. Was it a bluff? A distraction? Or a real warning? He made a decision. Chen, get Winchester on the line. Now. But when Chen tried calling, Winchester didn't answer. His office line went to voicemail. His mobile went straight to voicemail. Morrison tried Cross's number. Same thing. Both of them unreachable at the exact moment when Morrison needed them most. Sir, Chen said, her voice tight. I'm getting reports that Winchester's car left the palace 20 minutes ago, heading toward Heathrow Airport. Morrison's mind raced. Winchester was running. But why? Unless he was, the realization hit him like a physical blow. Winchester wasn't investigating the smuggling ring. He was part of it. And Morrison had just sent Thomas Hartley into a trap, or worse, helped him escape. Get me the Edinburgh flight. Now. Chen patched him through to the pilot. Morrison's voice was urgent. This is Captain Morrison, Palace Security. I'm ordering you to return to base immediately. You are not cleared to land in Edinburgh. The pilot's voice came back confused. Sir, I have flight clearance. My passenger hasn't indicated any problems. What's the emergency? The emergency is a direct order from Palace Security. Turn that plane around now or I'll have the RAF intercept you. There was a long pause. Then Thomas Hartley's voice came through the connection, smooth and amused. Captain Morrison, how nice to hear from you. But I'm afraid I can't comply with your request. You see, I know you found my little cargo hold. And I know you've been a very busy boy, poking into things that don't concern you. Morrison's blood ran cold. Mr. Hartley, you're under investigation for smuggling and money laundering. I'm ordering this plane to return. You're ordering? Thomas laughed. Captain, You have no authority here. This aircraft is registered under diplomatic protection. You can't touch me. You can't touch my cargo. And you certainly can't stop me from conducting my business. Your business is illegal. My business is sanctioned at the highest levels. Do you think I've been doing this alone? Do you think I'm that stupid? Thomas's voice turned cold. Winchester has been very helpful. As have several other people you'd be shocked to learn about. People who benefit greatly from my work. People who would do anything to protect their interests. Chen grabbed Morrison's arm, showing him something on her tablet. A news alert. Palace Security Director Lord Winchester reported in serious car accident near Heathrow. Condition unknown. Morrison felt sick. Winchester hadn't run. He'd been silenced. You see, Captain, Thomas continued, you've been chasing the wrong man. I'm just a businessman. A very well-connected businessman with friends in very high places. The real question you should be asking is, who's been protecting me? Who's been signing off on my flights? Who's been ensuring my cargo never gets searched? Your mother, Morrison said quietly. Thomas laughed again, but this time it was bitter. My mother. She's as ignorant as you are. No, Captain. Think higher. Think about who really runs this palace. Who has access to everything? Who controls security protocols? Morrison's mind reeled. Higher than the Queen Consort? That meant impossible, he whispered. Is it? Thomas asked. Or have you just never looked carefully enough? Enjoy your investigation, Captain. Though I doubt you'll be employed much longer. Landing in Edinburgh in 20 minutes? Do send my regards to whoever replaces you. The connection went dead. Morrison stood frozen, the implications crashing over him like waves. If Thomas was telling the truth, if someone at the very top of the palace hierarchy was involved, then this investigation wouldn't just end his career, it could end his life. Chen looked at him, waiting. What do we do? Morrison thought about the easy path. Report the plane landed, file his paperwork. Let it all disappear into the bureaucratic machinery of palace politics. Keep his job, his pension, his safe life. But then he thought about the golden chalice on that plane. The curator in Athens, who'd supposedly died. The museums looted during wars. The history erased for profit. The system that protected criminals because of their bloodline. We keep digging, he said, and we don't trust anyone. Not Winchester. Not Cross. Not anyone in the official chain of command. Sir Winchester's accident might not be an accident. Which means we're both in danger now. We know too much. Morrison grabbed his coat. We need to get those surveillance recordings before someone makes them disappear. And we need to find out who Thomas is meeting in Edinburgh. Where are we going? To the one place in this palace where people keep secrets that even the royals don't know about. The archives. If there's a record of who's been signing off on Thomas's flights, it'll be buried there. And we're going to find it. As they hurried through the palace corridors, Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every guard, every servant, every official they passed could be working for whoever was at the top of this conspiracy. He'd spent 12 years protecting the royal family. Now he was about to uncover which member of that family didn't deserve his protection. The truth was waiting in those archives. And Morrison had a sinking feeling that once he found it, nothing in the palace would ever be the same again. The palace archives were housed in a forgotten corner of the building, 3 floors below ground level. Morrison and Chen descended the narrow stone staircase, their footsteps echoing in the darkness. Few people even knew these archives existed. Fewer still had access to them. Morrison used his security override code to unlock the heavy metal door. It swung open with a groan that spoke of decades without use. Inside, the air smelled of old paper, leather, and secrets. Chen pulled out a flashlight. Rows of filing cabinets stretched into the darkness, each one containing records that went back centuries. Where do we even start? Flight authorization logs, Morrison said. Every royal flight has to be approved by someone. The signatures will tell us who's been protecting Thomas. They split up, Chen taking the left section, Morrison the right. For 2 hours, they searched through dusty files, reading by flashlight. looking for any record of Thomas Hartley's international flights. Morrison's fingers grew black with old ink, his eyes strained in the dim light. Then Chen's voice cut through the silence. "Sir, I found something. But you're not going to like it." Morrison hurried over. Chen held a file marked Confidential Royal Flight Authorizations 2024 to 2026. Inside were dozens of authorization forms, each one signed and stamped with official seals. Morrison's hands shook as he flipped through them. Every single one of them. Thomas's 43 flights had been personally authorized, but not by the Queen Consort. Not by Winchester. The signature on every authorization was crisp, unmistakable, and absolutely devastating. It belonged to Prince Edward, the king's younger brother, the man third in line to the throne, a man trusted with some of the highest security clearances in the government, a man Morrison had personally protected at dozens of events. "This can't be real," Chen whispered. "Prince Edward. He's supposed to be the clean one, the responsible one." Morrison's mind raced back through everything he knew about Edward. The prince had always been serious, dedicated to duty. He chaired multiple charities, served on government advisory boards, and was known for his work in international diplomacy. He'd been to every country where Thomas had supposedly smuggled artifacts. He'd met with foreign officials, toured archaeological sites, attended cultural preservation conferences. "It's perfect cover," Morrison said slowly. "Everyone thinks he's there to protect cultural heritage, but really, he's facilitating its theft." Chen pulled out more files. "Look at this. Financial records. Edward's charitable foundation has received donations from the same shell companies that Thomas uses. Millions of pounds. All perfectly legal. All perfectly documented. The money goes in as donations, gets laundered through legitimate charitable work, and comes out clean." Morrison sat down hard on a file cabinet, the weight of what they'd discovered crushing him. This wasn't just smuggling. This was treason. A member of the royal family, someone in the line of succession, using his position to commit crimes and fund criminal enterprises. "We need to get this to someone," Chen said. "The police, Parliament, someone who can act on it." "Who?" Morrison asked bitterly. "Who do we trust with this?" "Edward has connections everywhere. Intelligence services, military, government. If we go public and he denies it, we're the ones who look like conspiracy theorists. We need more proof." "Undeniable proof." His phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. "Basement archives. You're getting close. The Edinburgh meeting is happening now. Record it. It's your only chance." Morrison showed Chen the message. "Someone's helping us. But who? And how do they know where we are?" Chen added, looking around nervously. Morrison made a decision. The surveillance recordings from Thomas's flight. If we can get audio of his Edinburgh meeting, if we can prove who he's meeting with and what they're discussing, that's our evidence. Oh. They ran back up the stairs. Through the palace corridors to Morrison's office. He pulled up the secure server where the MI6 surveillance recordings should have been stored. The folder was empty. "They deleted them," Chen said. "Someone wiped the server." "Not necessarily." Morrison's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Everything on palace security servers gets backed up to an off-site location. It's automatic. Even if someone deletes the files here, the backup should still exist." He accessed the backup server using credentials that only a handful of people possessed. And there it was. 4 hours of surveillance footage from Thomas Hartley's plane. Audio, video, everything. Morrison pulled up the latest recordings. Thomas had landed in Edinburgh 40 minutes ago. The surveillance showed him meeting someone in a private lounge at the airport. Morrison's blood turned to ice as he saw who it was. Prince Edward sat across from Thomas in the lounge, both men drinking whiskey like old friends. The audio crackled to life. The Athens shipment arrived safely. Edward's voice was calm, businesslike. "Monaco as planned. Our buyer is very pleased. The chalice alone brought in 3 million euros. Good, I have another situation that needs handling. The Morrison problem." Morrison's hands froze on the keyboard. Chen grabbed his shoulder. "The security captain." Thomas sounded amused. I told you, he was getting too close. Winchester was supposed to contain him. But Winchester got sloppy, started asking too many questions himself. Had to be dealt with. The car accident wasn't an accident then. Winchester understood the risks when he joined our operation. He chose profit over loyalty. Fatal mistake. Edward took a sip of his drink. Morrison is more dangerous. He's a true believer. Thinks he's protecting the monarchy by exposing us. Want me to handle him? No, too obvious. We'll use the official channels. A security review, questions about his judgment, inappropriate use of palace resources. By the time we're done, he'll be discredited and dismissed. Just another paranoid officer who cracked under pressure? Thomas laughed. And if that doesn't work, then we use more permanent solutions. Like Winchester. Edward's voice was cold, emotionless. This operation has been running for 5 years. It's brought in over £200 million. It's funded diplomatic initiatives, intelligence operations, and my position in the succession. I'm not going to let one security officer destroy it. What about the mother? Camilla's been getting suspicious lately. She's been handled. Her chief of staff is one of ours. Any concerns she raises get redirected, buried in paperwork. She thinks her son is a legitimate businessman. Let her keep thinking that. Morrison felt sick. The entire conversation was damning. Treason, murder, criminal conspiracy, all captured on surveillance equipment. All recorded and backed up. We have him, Chen whispered. This is enough to bring down the whole operation. But Morrison's mind was already 3 steps ahead. We can't go through normal channels. Edward has people everywhere. The moment we try to use this evidence officially, it'll disappear. We'll disappear. Then what do we do? Morrison thought about his oath. His duty. His 12 years of loyal service to the crown. And he thought about the man on that recording. A prince who'd turned his position into a criminal empire. Who'd ordered murders and betrayed everything the monarchy was supposed to stand for. We go nuclear, Morrison said finally. We leak this to the press. Every major newspaper, every television station, every journalist in the country. We flood the media with so much evidence that it can't be contained or denied. We make it public before they can stop us. Chen looked scared but determined. That'll destroy the monarchy. The scandal will be massive. The monarchy will survive, Morrison said with more conviction than he felt. But only if it's cleaned of people like Edward. The public deserves to know who they're bowing to. Started copying the files to multiple encrypted drives. Each one would go to a different journalist, a different news outlet. But as he worked, he knew he was crossing a line he could never uncross. After this, his career would be over. His life might be in danger. He'd be labeled a traitor by some, a hero by others. His phone buzzed one more time. The unknown number. You're doing the right thing. The evidence is being sent to additional sources as insurance. You're not alone in this fight. A friend in the palace. Morrison stared at the message. Someone else inside the palace, someone with access to these same files, was working against Edward. But who? The answer would have to wait. Right now, he had evidence to distribute and a prince to expose. The next 24 hours would change British history. The revelation was about to shake the palace to its foundations. By sunrise, the world had changed. Morrison sat in a safe house on the outskirts of London, watching the news coverage explode across every channel. His encrypted drives had reached 12 different journalists at midnight. By 3 in the morning, the first stories had gone live online. By 5, every major newspaper had the scandal on their front page. By 6, the Prime Minister was calling an emergency meeting of Parliament. Prince Edward linked to smuggling ring, screamed one headline. Royal treason. Palace insider profits from stolen artifacts. Read another. The television showed footage of police surrounding Edward's residence. News helicopters circled overhead. Reporters crowded the palace gates, shouting questions at anyone who emerged. The government had moved faster than Morrison expected. Edward had been taken into custody just 2 hours after the story broke. His assets were frozen. His security clearance was revoked. Chen sat across from Morrison, both of them exhausted but unable to sleep. They'd been awake for 36 hours straight. Parliament's calling for a full investigation. The king is supposed to address the nation this afternoon. Morrison nodded, watching footage of Thomas Hartley being arrested at Edinburgh Airport. The smuggler had tried to board another flight, but police had intercepted him. The artifacts from his plane were being catalogued by experts from the British Museum. Every piece would be returned to its country of origin. Sir Chen said quietly, "We did it. We actually did it." But Morrison didn't feel victorious. He felt hollowed out, exhausted by the weight of what they'd uncovered. Winchester was dead. Edward's career was destroyed. The monarchy's reputation was in tatters. Yes, they'd stopped a criminal operation. But at what cost? His phone rang. An unknown number, Morrison answered cautiously. Captain Morrison? A woman's voice, cultured and familiar. This is the Queen Consort. I'd like to speak with you. Privately. 20 minutes later, a discreet car picked up Morrison from the safe house. He was driven through back roads into the palace through a service entrance. No press, no cameras, no witnesses. The Queen Consort received him in a small sitting room without attendants or guards. She looked older than Morrison had ever seen her, the weight of the scandal evident in every line of her face. Captain Morrison, she said, gesturing for him to sit. You've caused quite an upheaval. I was doing my duty. Investigating criminal activity. I know. She poured 2 cups of tea with steady hands. And I'm grateful. Truly, my son was being used. I failed to see it. I failed to protect him from people who would exploit his position and resources. Morrison accepted the tea but didn't drink. Thomas knew what he was doing, ma'am. The recordings make that clear? Yes, he did. Her voice was heavy with sadness, and he'll face justice for it. As will Edward. As will everyone involved in this operation. She looked at Morrison directly. I wanted to thank you personally. What you did took courage. Exposing corruption, even when it pointed to the highest levels of the palace, even when it put your own life at risk. I had help, ma'am. Someone inside the palace was feeding me information, warning me. Without them, I might not have survived this investigation. The Queen Consort smiled slightly. Yes, that's someone. Captain Morrison, there are people within these walls who believe in duty above all else, who believe the monarchy must be clean to survive. I'm one of them. My private secretary is another. Morrison's eyes widened. Your secretary was the one sending me information, but the investigation pointed toward your office. The documents, the money transfers, all fabricated by Edward to implicate me if anything went wrong. He was clever, I'll give him that. But my secretary noticed the discrepancies months ago. She's been quietly collecting evidence ever since. When you stumbled onto the smuggling operation, she decided to use you as a catalyst. She fed you just enough information to keep you investigating, to keep you alive, and to lead you to the truth. Morrison felt a rush of emotion. He hadn't been alone. Someone had been protecting him, guiding him, ensuring he found the evidence he needed. What happens now? He asked. Now we rebuild, the Queen Consort said firmly. The monarchy must prove it's worthy of public trust. That means transparency, accountability, and justice. Edward will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Thomas will return every artifact he stole. And the security protocols that allowed this to happen will be completely restructured. And my position, ma'am? She looked at him with something like admiration. Captain Morrison, you've just demonstrated that you're exactly the kind of security officer this palace needs. Someone who puts duty above politics. Someone who can't be bought or intimidated. I'm recommending you for Director of Palace Security. Lord Winchester's former position? Morrison was stunned. Ma'am, I destroyed a member of the royal family. Half the country thinks I'm a traitor. The other half thinks you're a hero. You expose corruption that had infected the very heart of this institution. That's not treason, Captain. That's loyalty. True loyalty. She stood, signaling the meeting was over. Think about my offer. But regardless of your decision, know that you have my gratitude and my respect. Morrison left the palace feeling lighter than he had in days. Chen was waiting for him in the car, her eyes questioning. "Well?" she asked. "We've been offered promotions," Morrison said with a slight smile, and thanked for nearly destroying the monarchy. Chen laughed, the first genuine laugh Morrison had heard from her in days. "Only we could turn exposing royal corruption into a career advancement." As they drove away from the palace, Morrison looked back at the ancient building. It had survived wars, revolutions, scandals that would have toppled lesser institutions. It would survive this too. But it would be different now. Cleaner, more accountable. Better. 3 months later, Morrison sat in Winchester's former office, now his office, reviewing new security protocols. The investigation had uncovered 17 people involved in Edward's smuggling ring. All had been arrested. The artifacts had been returned to their countries of origin. With public ceremonies and apologies from the British government, Edward himself was awaiting trial, stripped of his titles and removed from the line of succession. Thomas had taken a plea deal, agreeing to testify against his co-conspirators in exchange for a reduced sentence. The monarchy had taken a hit in public opinion, but slowly it was recovering. The king's address to the nation had been powerful, promising reform and transparency. The queen consort had become an advocate for cultural heritage protection, working with international organizations to combat antiquities theft. Chen knocked on Morrison's door. She'd been promoted to deputy director, his second in command. "Sir, we have a situation. A minor one, but you should know about it." "What kind of situation?" "One of the junior royals wants to start a charity foundation. International travel, cultural exchanges, that sort of thing. Given what happened with Edward, I thought we should establish strict oversight protocols." Morrison smiled. "Absolutely. Draft a proposal for new charity foundation guidelines. Every flight manifested, every donation tracked, every trip documented. We're not going to let this happen again, yes, sir." As Chen left, Morrison looked at the photograph on his desk. It showed the golden chalice from the plane, now safely returned to the museum in Athens. The curator's family had been given a formal apology and compensation. The artifact had been restored to public display, where it belonged. Morrison had kept a copy of the photograph as a reminder that duty sometimes meant making hard choices, that loyalty to institutions meant holding them accountable, that the truth, no matter how painful, was always worth pursuing. His phone buzzed. A text from the unknown number that had helped him throughout the investigation. The Queen Consort's secretary. "Gah, well done, Captain. The palace is safer because of you." Your friend Morrison deleted the message, but he smiled. The palace had its secrets, its hidden allies, its complex web of loyalties and duties. But now, for the first time in his career, he felt he understood his true role. Not just to protect the royals from external threats, but to protect the institution from itself. To ensure that power didn't corrupt, that privilege didn't become immunity, that duty meant something real. The revelation had shaken the palace, but it had also cleansed it, and Morrison would spend the rest of his career making sure it stayed clean. Outside his window, tourists gathered for the changing of the guard. Normal people, living normal lives, still believing in the traditions and pageantry of the monarchy. They deserved leaders worthy of their trust. Morrison would make sure they got them. The investigation was over. The real work was just beginning.